So I'm sure you guys saw a special announcement from Meta today. So we're going to be adding a little topic into our conversation, but I'll go ahead and do a little intro as we're getting started here and letting people get joined. Um, so we'll be starting in just a couple minutes. Thank you so much for being here. I am Sharonique from TensorWave. I help with all the marketing and obviously the Twitter spaces here and conversation and facilitating that. So we are TensorWave. For anyone that's not familiar, we are a premier cloud service provider specializing in the AMD MI300X accelerators. So we are ready to roll with those. So if anyone out there needs compute, make sure to visit us at tensorwave.com and we will get you taken care of. So this is our weekly Tensor Talk where we get together and we talk about AI, what's going on, and getting deep in there into the topic. So we'll talk about all different things, different tools that are available, different laws, all sorts of different things in the AI space. We have exciting guests and speakers here with us today. We have, as usual, Kyle Bell, the Vice President of AI at TensorWave. Thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciate your input. We also have Amanda Molina, who is the Corporate Counsel for Cloud and Artificial Intelligence at Microsoft, among many other things that she does. Amazing, amazing, smart person we get to speak with. As well as Jerrod Lew, who is a creative partner with Freetick, Llama, and Leonardo AI, as well as the founder of the Onwards project that explores how generative AI changes the world around us, including our interactions with colleagues, peers, and family. So lots of good information here. So first, before we dive into some headlines and your specialties, Jerrod, could I just have you introduce yourself to our audience and tell our listeners a little brief elevator style pitch about your background and how you came to get into the AI space where you are today?
Yeah, thanks so much. Hi, everyone. My name's Jared. It's a huge honor to be here. So thank you so much for the invitation. I'm a multifaceted content creator and creating online content on social media since 2007, ranging from songwriting and music to tech and gaming. And over the last year, I've been focusing on generative AI, and I created this initiative called the Onwards Project, which aims to explore how generative AI tools are changing our world, but also encouraging everyone to release their full creative potential. And it's been a very wild year of making content in the space around tutorials of how people get involved with AI at those businesses, but also how to use these tools practically in your day-to-day life. And it's a great project which combines a lot of my different passions together: content creation and editing and sound and music and video and art. So it's such a huge pleasure to be able to talk about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And one further question, what would you hope that people could understand about AI? One big takeaway that you wish people knew?
To me, it's all about the opportunity. I think everyone has natural creativity within them, and I think AI has a fantastic opportunity for everyone to communicate and speak in different ways and talk and work and collaborate with people in different ways, thanks to AI unlocking all this for us. And I think that's the key takeaway for me is I encourage people to see the opportunity.
Awesome. Awesome. Love that. Lots of opportunity. People just need to take advantage. Amazing. Well, Amanda, could you do the same? Please introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about your background and how you ended up being in the world of AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I'm excited to be here with everyone. So my name is Amanda Molina. I currently work at Microsoft in the Cloud and Artificial Intelligence division. My focus of practice is data privacy and cybersecurity. In addition to the work I do at Microsoft, I'm also a JAG attorney in the United States Air Force Reserve Corps. And prior to coming over to the private sector, I worked for the United States House of Representatives in a nonpartisan role in the Office of the Legislative Counsel. My focus there was in tech and innovation, more specifically. So I worked a lot on new bills that came out in that space. And how I kind of transitioned over was, especially being in a nonpartisan role, I realized that there was a lot going on in the tech space, and I wanted to be a part of and kind of use that intersectionality I had between military and going into the private sector to try to influence the space and give a unique perspective.
Awesome. Amazing. So you have a lot of experience and education behind you. What is it that you really hope to accomplish with all of that put together in the current AI and tech landscape where you are?
Absolutely. And I love that question because I think everyone's kind of just diving. There's a lot of hype around the space, but my personal goals is to try to focus on that kind of valuable perspective I have with this intersectionality between law, technology, and AI. So one of the things that are top of mind for me is promoting responsible AI development and use. In addition to the work I do, just volunteering in nonprofits, is to try to demystify a lot of the confusion or frustration that exists around artificial technology, as well as ensuring compliance and regulatory alignment. And as I mentioned, fostering collaboration between sectors, not just the private sector and public in terms of government and businesses, but also with educational entities as well.
Amazing. That sounds like a pretty big undertaking.
Thanks.
Well, thank you both for sharing what you're working on, what you're hoping to accomplish, and where you are in the world of AI. And now diving right in, I initially had a couple different topics prepared, but we've had some headlines and some announcements drop this morning that I think we need to dive into. I know, Kyle, you and I had briefly touched on this a little bit, but we saw Meta announcing the Llama 3.1, specifically 405B model. And there are a lot of things going on with this. It talks about improved reasoning capabilities, a larger 128,000 token context window, improved support for 8 languages, and more. One of the fascinating things I saw is it says it took several months on over 16,000 H100 GPUs. So there's some crazy stuff going on here. Kyle, would you be able to dive in and talk about what this all means, what capabilities we should be able to see from this, or what's possible with these new updates?
Yes, obviously this just came out today, was dropped. Anyone paying a little more attention might have seen the 4chan leak the other day. So that included some evaluations. I think the big surprise was this outcompeting GPT-4o on many benchmarks. I wasn't really expecting that. I kind of thought this was going to be, hey, here's the bigger model with some slight improvements. Honestly, after seeing like Nemotron come out with, I think, 340B, that was a little bit underwhelming. So, in my mind, it wasn't always like, okay, bigger equals better. It really does come down to your training sets and how long you train for and the quality of those sets. I think that's what we kind of see with the 3.1, they added a patch version to that, so to speak. But it's not just the 405B that is, we're seeing this massive increase in accuracy. Now, obviously, that's competing with, your Geminis, your GPT-4, your Claude models. But if you look at the 70B and 8B variants that were released as well under 3.1, they've had a massive boost in evaluation. And I'm just kind of awed seeing the evaluations that were fully released today across the board. Additionally, too, they've been able, with the additional training, that they were happy to bump up the max context length. That was bumped the configuration from 8K to roughly 128K. So, I mean, that's exciting too. That it really opens up a lot of use cases that were typically the realm of larger models like GPT-4. And then obviously we've been doing work on some long context and persistent caching capabilities. So it's kind of really exciting to see the open source start to gear towards longer context in their models.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. How do you see this being instituted, and what use cases do you see, like you personally, or even for TensorWave being able to use something like this?
Yeah, so obviously with 128K context, I think it opens up a lot of doors. You can have it's not just real-time chat. Now you can really start pulling in, full document sizes. I think I was looking through a RegTech document. I came out to about 100,000 tokens. So it actually falls within that context window just fine. I think the big thing, right, is if you can get these 405B models. Now, probably not going to be very cost effective for most use cases, obviously. I've heard the generation rate is pretty slow. I mean, this is a dense model, right? They didn't train an MOE here. So that this is full activation, very slow. But the cool part is now people can spin up their own 405, right? And the state-of-the-art models, while not necessarily directly applicable to a lot of cases, unless you get them fully optimized, they're fantastic for data synthesis and stuff like that. So you can kind of use that to generate really high quality data that you can then use to help fine tune or optimize a smaller model for your use case.
Amazing. Yeah, awesome. Super exciting. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about this again as it's been out longer and people have a chance to play with it and have a little more experience with it. But I have an interesting question that I saw from a tweet here from Meta. And I'd love to bring Amanda and Jerrod, Kyle, all of you into this, whoever has a thought. But it says that Mark Zuckerberg shared in an open letter this morning that we believe that open source will ensure that more people around the world have access to the benefits and opportunities of AI, that power isn't concentrated in the hands of a small few, and that the technology can be deployed more evenly and safely across society. Do you believe that Meta is able to accomplish this exact goal that he's brought up, or do you think that there are strides that still need to be taken, or any thoughts on those statements there?
You can go ahead, Jerrod.
No, go ahead, Maya. Go ahead.
Yeah, so these I just want to clarify that these are my personal views and do not reflect Microsoft or the United States government.
Fair.
So considering the Cambridge Analytical incident with Meta, I think that we've seen a lot of strides in regards to ensuring safety and reliability, especially as it concerns cybersecurity, as it concerns manipulation of facts and misinformation. But as far as the democratization of the technology itself, I agree that it is a great endeavor. But anytime that we have democratization, we always have to ensure that we consider the bad actors as well and the potential for the misuse of the technology. So whether or not they have those capabilities, I think we have yet to see where that will be. But I think they have made strides in that department. I'm interested in seeing how this plays out, though.
Awesome. Cautious but hopeful. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I completely agree with what Madeline just said. I think it's definitely important to consider, sure, open it to everyone, but not everyone out there, unfortunately, has great intentions. And I think a lot of work also has to be done by Meta and their competitors to ensure that there's upskilling and training in place and transparency around what it means to have access to these kind of tools. Obviously the opportunities they give, but also the kind of dangerous power that it can also give people as well, and also how to protect people. So I think it's a core balance here of obviously advancing the technology, but also making sure you're kind of taking people along the journey with you as well. So it's not just a huge risk to everyone without people even knowing. So I think it's two sides of the coin that have to move together at once.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kyle, any thoughts on that before I move along to our next point here?
Yeah, I think it's kind of an evolving area. Obviously, if I take today's open source models, you can get into some shenanigans, right? Obviously, there's the issue for deep fakes, and maybe I'm underselling the word shenanigan there. But it's you can't take typically an open source AI model today, turn it to an agent, and expect some incredible feat of hacking or something like that. So we haven't really gotten to that point where we have issues with the electoral grid and et cetera. That being said, as these models continue to become more powerful and more importantly, more optimal, right? Not only are these models going to become smarter, they're going to be more efficient. They're going to become cheaper to run. Compute is going to become cheaper and cheaper. And obviously we see that with Moore's law, and what's happening in the AI space is actually exceeding that vastly with cloud compute. But as that happens, this isn't like, okay, you have some bad actors with a data center able to spin this stuff up and utilize it poorly. But, someone could literally take a model, fine tune it, and then potentially deploy it on a much smaller amount of compute. And then doesn't really have that footprint. It's not as easily detectable, from, let's say, a national security level. So, I do champion the open source community and, making sure that, OpenAI and Google and these companies don't have a monopoly. But, it is going to become trickier and trickier as these models evolve.
And I think this kind of feeds in nicely to the next point I wanted to discuss. I'm going to direct this question first to you, Amanda, and then we can open it up a little. There's a recent headline that I thought would fall under your jurisdiction here. It says California lawmakers had voted to advance legislation on this past Tuesday that would require artificial intelligence companies to test their systems and add safety measures to prevent them from being potentially manipulated. And then the examples it gave was to wipe out states' electric grid or help build chemical weapons, etc. What are your thoughts on this, and how can this be done effectively?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the most part, the way legislation has worked in the United States specifically is we usually see a reactive approach to legislation. And I think it's a good thing that we're seeing a proactive approach to try and ensure that we have testing and safety measures. I mean, when we have a new pill, for example, or a new medical product, it gets tested and ensured that the product is safe for public consumption. And I think it's the same thing with AI technologies. We want to make sure that its safety and security are top of mind, that it can't be manipulated to cause harm. It's no secret in the national security space that our foreign adversaries as well as criminal adversaries have had our electric grids as a high value target. Even back in, I think it was 2014, Michael Rogers, the head of the NSA, testified to Congress that China already had the capabilities to shut down the US power grid system. So taking that into consideration, I think it's paramount, for us to consider these types of implications. But at the same time, on the other token side of the coin here, I think it's important for us that as we look at regulation, that we balance innovation and we don't stifle innovation and technological advancement when they're trying to ensure the safety and security. So that's a constant balance in any space, not just AI, but in any technology innovation space. But I think that we should constantly consider that. So that's why I think it takes a lot of stakeholder communication on these issues.
Yeah. Kyle and Jared, do you have any thoughts on this kind of bill and if it's necessary or a little bit extreme or anything to add to what Amanda had mentioned?
Yeah, I think it may buy a little bit of time, right? Most state-of-the-art models are typically fairly centralized by the big players, right? So it's easy to say, hey, we need some serious alignment on any model you're going to provide via an API, and mass distribute. At the same time, you can take these open source models, and Genie's kind of out of the bottle to an extent on that front, and you can fine tune it, you can remove alignment, you can basically you can remove all the safeguards that these larger companies bake into it. Those are not foolproof by any means. But unfortunately, I think it's kind of a bit of a prisoner's dilemma, right? As Amanda mentioned, right? We have foreign adversaries, you have this competition in the international politics. So, if we stifle or add too much regulation, China would just have less, right? So it's kind of if we don't do this first, an adversary will. So unfortunately, that does mean we can't just solve this with like domestic regulation. This is an international problem.
Jared, any thoughts on that before we move on?
I think, as Amanda mentioned, and also Kyle built on as well, I think the proactivity around this is refreshing. I think it's great that we don't need a major incident to trigger something to happen. And I think this proactivity needs to keep moving, because I swear every day I wake up, especially as a content creator in the AI space, and there's another update, there's new models coming out. And I look back a year to when I started this whole journey, and if I would have realized a year later how much further we have come, I wouldn't have believed it. So I hope that the proactivity continues to be a priority, so we keep up to date with all the latest releases that are coming out, and also new tools that are appearing as well. And I think it is really important to understand that this, as Kyle mentioned, this is not just a US problem or a specific country problem. This is a global thing we're talking about here. These tools are available around the entire world and can be used to potentially cause problems outside of jurisdiction. So we need to take that larger approach always here for this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked your take on that we're being proactive without a big catastrophe prompting it. Yeah, that's great. That's a positive way to look at it. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So Kyle, a question I had for you then on this topic is, the lawmakers can debate this in court and talk about what's needed on these bills, but what does that actually look like on the back end of implementing it into AI and when it's being built? Can you shed any insight into that?
Well, I think part of the goal And I think I've seen this with other bills that were potentially we're going through the California legislation. They were wanting to enforce alignments on models and then hold liability, right? So I think part of it was trying to ensure that people aren't publishing models that are knowingly don't have alignment baked in. But then I believe they also wanted to add some liability to cloud providers as well, right? So the cloud providers need to have people have a switch to turn these things off at a moment's notice. It could be very interesting. I don't see alignment within the model as foolproof, period. Now, in terms of maybe adding some precautions, at the data center level, which I think is a good bottleneck to catch a lot of this. Sure, I can spin up a bunch of homegrown hardware and trying to spin something up, but it's going to be very limited in scope and speed capability. The majority models are going to be hosted on clouds, whether that's a public cloud or on premises data center. So frankly, if you can add layers that can basically enforce alignment outside the model and be much more consistent, right? There's potential that you can kind of catch some of these bad actors in the act, right? So if they're trying to use an API model to do something bad, then it will detect that. And you already see that with GPT-4, right? They have additional models that will basically sniff out the prompts to make sure they are following their guidelines, ethics, and alignment. But I could see something like that being regulated beyond just the model itself. So I think that's probably a little more pragmatic as well, considering the model itself is easily fine-tuned or lobotomized to whatever a nefarious or bad actor wants it to do.
Yeah. Wow, interesting. I really appreciate you sharing that take on it. That took it in a direction I hadn't necessarily explored or thought of myself, which is obviously why I asked you, because you have way more expertise. So very interesting. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate that. Amanda, I wanted to bring this back to you in your area of expertise, where you have this background in cybersecurity as well. So what safety measures do you think should be put in place for AI? So it was a pretty broad article about this legislative bill in California, but do you have any more specifics that you would want to see put into place?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we think about regulating AI, like from a legal perspective, the first thing that kind of is a hard threshold to pass is what's the definition of AI? Because from legal perspective, we always think about definitions. So I just want to preface it by saying we don't have a universal definition of AI. And I completely agreed with Jerrod and Kyle, by the way, earlier when they said this is, and it goes beyond just United States regulation. I hope that at least considering we are the leaders in the space, that we can continue to kind of regulate it at the lower levels. But as far as what we can do kind of at the offset is ensure that we have good data privacy handling techniques, including what Kyle had alluded to is adversarial attacks where they exploit vulnerabilities in the LLMs, theft of information, ensuring just compliance all up with GDPR and other data privacy requirements. One particular just example I'll give, I think back in 2022, Fabio Urbina and other researchers published a paper saying, and this kind of goes back to the regulation in California, but their paper essentially said, with pharmaceutical development, you could take the same technology and flip it and ask it to create chemical weapons. And it came up with tens of thousands of chemical weapons that you could create. So that type of technology in the hand of a terrorist or, going back to the democratization, the ability to use that's what we want to protect against. So not just ensuring the models are not exploited and push, help with misinformation, but also consider bias and fairness. So at that baseline is ensuring all of these kind of techniques and that people use to kind of get around and exploit the model that we're protecting against.
Fascinating. So there's a lot of different angles that need to be considered. There's definitely a lot of room for different minds and different groups of people to input on this. So I'm happy we get to talk about it, and I'm also hopeful that there are a lot more people discussing it and people in positions that can make it happen too.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So let's move on to our next topic here. This one's going to be kind of fun, I think. Jerrod, you made a post actually about this earlier on preparing for our Spaces conversation today using Claude 3.5 Sonnet. So let's chat a little bit more about Anthropic's most recent AI model that we just named. It's emerged as a powerful rival to OpenAI's GPT-4o, which now we know that the Llama is also competing with this, but most notably for Claude, it's in the field of data visualization. So this is said to be better than ChatGPT 4o, but not as widely used. So I know you've used it now that I've seen, but can you talk a little bit about how you use it and what your thoughts are on it, Jerrod?
Sure. Yeah, I'm really excited about Claude, and I think we're in a really interesting time where all these major players are releasing models quite quickly, all trying to kind of keep ahead of each other. I think, and me speaking as a consumer and as a creator focusing on these tools, I'm always a fan of when a tool provides more practical features for the day-to-day users of that. And what Claude Sonnet 3.5 has brought along is this sort of new feature called artifacts. So as you are prompting it, whether it's writing you something or analyzing a document, you can actually ask it to create a visualization of what you're kind of asking it to do, whether that is organizing data that you've uploaded through a file like an Excel document, or summarizing into an interactive spreadsheet, a long investor report, as an example. And for this call in particular, I decided, hey, look, since we're talking about code, let's create an artifacts widget on the tool to create a little FAQ about what this new feature is, what's involved in it, and it's just a good way to get some of the talking points before doing a presentation like this, but also going to events as well. A few of us were at the Imagine AI event a couple of weeks ago, and Claude was very helpful during this event because I was able to upload information from the website of all the different speakers, all the different talks, and I said to it, hey, I'm going to this event, there's like 30 different things going on. Can you please go through all the information here and give me a rundown of all the speakers who have something to do with AI music or art or productivity or are they startup earners? And I was very quickly able to give me that in a much more interactive way. So I knew when I went to the event, the people I wanted to speak to and the workshops I wanted to go to, because it managed to synthesize that data in a much more visual way for me. And I think this is just a really powerful tool for everyone, because I think with tools like ChatGPT out there and obviously now with Meta AI and their latest release, I think they are missing sometimes that practical element, that visual element that's just kind of there as a co-pilot. So it's good to see Claude going down this direction right now.
Awesome. Fascinating use cases. Thank you for sharing that. It makes me want to dive in and try a few things myself. I played with it a little, but not to the extent that you've described. So I know what I'm doing when we're off our spaces today. Kyle, I'm curious from your end of things, what is it? We talked a little bit about with the Llama update, how it's 16,000 GPUs over several months, but what are the actual kind of nuts and bolts of what goes into updating models to make them better and better each time?
Yeah, like I said, it always starts with the data. So it doesn't matter what, obviously it doesn't matter your architecture, but before you get sold on architecture and which model to use and all that stuff, you have to have good data. And the better you can refine that data, the and the longer you can train on it, frankly, the more pre-training you can do, the more you're going to squeeze out of that end result. So yeah, I like I said, you look at Nemotron 340B, that wasn't competing nearly as much as it should have if you're just thinking about parameter size, but it really just come down to data set. And I think Meta did a fantastic job with that. But to build on what Jerrod's saying too, it's not just the model, right? You're trying to build a tool. You're trying to build something useful for people. That's really what they care about. I had someone I saw on Twitter, I was really interested in post. It said, in this moment that we're experiencing now, it's not so much a renaissance in AI as it is a renaissance in user experience. I think that kind of resonated, and that is really why like GPT-4 is so popular. It's not because they built. Oh, and to be fair, it is a very, very good model. But I mean, if you look at their interface, it's it has the Google experience. It's just a bar you type into it, and knows what you want it to accomplish. I think Claude is adding these agentic functions too, and that's really key to building a useful project, and not just an interesting project.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing. Amanda, I didn't get a chance to ask you. Maybe you could share with us, do you use any AI tools on the regular? Which ones have you found to be most helpful, or do you like to interact with if you do use them?
Absolutely. I mostly use Copilot. No preference there. No. Microsoft's Copilot. No, I mean at Microsoft in general, they generally allow us to use it throughout day to day, and I see it as a secondary, second brain essentially, and a tool that helps respond to just mostly respond to emails. It doesn't really do the legal work, but overall, I think I haven't had a chance to use the new Claude or updated one, but in general, I will just say that it depends on what you need to use it for. Some are better for certain things, especially the visualizations aren't very helpful as much in the OpenAI model, but they are in Claude.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so many tools. Do any of you have recommendations on how people can narrow down the tools that are going to work best for them, or is it just sort of a try it all and find out what fits?
I'd say sometimes it's easiest to start with the simplest to use tool. So honestly, I still use GPT-4 on a lot of tasks just because hotkey away from access on my Mac. I am a big fan of their voice modalities, right? So, and I think I've said in the previous post, I get screen fatigue. Like I am on my computer all day long. The last thing I'm going to do is interface via a screen. So being able to just talk to the model in a very conversational way, and it's able to access, information, data, the internet, all the agentic functions I need. I can kind of do additional research and learning with my eyes closed, sitting on the couch. So for me, that's it. Probably one of the easiest ways you can interface with the model is just talking to it. But obviously, as you get more into these domains, plugins such as Copilot are fantastic. But I would say start something simple, kind of understand how to converse with these AIs, and then get to more specific tools like Perplexity for search and Claude.
I wonder if you could even have a conversation with GPT-4o and ask it what other AI tools would be useful to you, and then it would outdo itself.
I literally asked it all the trending tools. So yeah.
Jerrod, were you going to contribute something? Did I cut you off there by accident?
No, not at all. I just wanted to add, I think when it comes to getting involved with these tools, I always recommend to people to, if they are new or a little bit concerned about AI, but are interested or curious about it, like I always say list 2 or 3 things during your day that you do that maybe you feel it could be done faster or could be done in a different way. I think research and search is a great example of this. And I always say, look, for those 2 or 3 things that you find that are tedious and you want to understand it in a better way, give an AI tool a go to see if it can help you do it. And this is honestly where I found Perplexity a few months ago. And now it's transitioned to becoming a tool that I used before Google, because it just gives me information faster. And then I realized, okay, that process of, all right, researching things takes so long, Google, this tool makes it faster for me. And then that curiosity kind of extends you to try more and more. And I really just recommend that. Pick 2 things that frustrate you and try to fix it or try to alleviate some of that pain with an AI solution.
So we're talking a lot about these LLMs that we can use these tools, but we're giving them all our information. We're talking to them about our businesses, our lives, asking for advice, all these different things. Amanda, maybe you could comment, and I know we've touched on it briefly, but if there's anything else to add on security concerns that we should have with these widely used LLMs and AI tools that pretty much almost everyone, it seems like, is going to have some sort of access to.
Yeah, absolutely. I will recommend, because I see this all the time, not just in in what I do on my day to day, but also just friends and family. Be careful with the information that you're putting into the system. They have privacy statements with how it's used, but I've met startups who put their entire business plan and their code directly into it, or proprietary business information as well as just really personal information. So see a lot of that as well. They do have their privacy statement up, a lot of these companies that have it there, but I just, I see it all the time. Like, just got to be careful with how that data is used. So that goes to like the security as well as like anonymization techniques that I'd mentioned earlier. But there's, other things that I think that companies just in general need to consider, like basic cybersecurity requirements, like robust testing and validation of the systems themselves to ensure resilience, like pen test or penetration testing, as well, access control, multi-factor authorization. And one thing I'm seeing now that's I've even noticed with ChatGPT is there's sources that are starting to be like provided on some of them, whereas earlier I didn't see sources. So when it comes to hallucinations, I see a lot of people, even lawyers, putting like fake information out there that ChatGPT or any of the other LLMs like provided to them, and they're not fact checking this. So because of the hallucinations, I'm seeing it come out in those other ways. I don't think I directly answered your question, but those are just top of mind for me when it comes to the use and the kind of issues I've seen.
No, that was great. That was great commentary on it. Kyle, Jerrod, anything to add on people sharing so much with these AI tools?
I think in general, not just with AI, but in how we interact with anything online, just I think and I do a lot of sessions, especially at my work around social media safety, is to be really aware again of what information you're providing in and what information you're comfortable with sharing. Um, and I think AI for sure, this is a major concern, but I think across the board, this has to be something that is constantly refreshed for us. Like, what information are we sharing on these platforms, from our photos to our bios to our work history to everything, just to be aware. And I always say that people look at platforms like Facebook or Instagram or even this platform on X as having a lot of data information. You can go to anyone's LinkedIn account and you can see most people's entire work history and where they live. And I'm like, that is such a flag of how much information people are willing to share on there. But the same risks are there across the board. So I think we just have to take a moment in time to ask ourselves, are we comfortable with prompting this information into an AI tool?
Yeah, I also argue this is probably why a lot of people are very, and especially certain domains, are very hesitant to send their data to Gemini or OpenAI, or to Google or OpenAI, right? Because they're incentivized to build the biggest, baddest model, and that takes a lot of data, right? So it is in their best interest to be able to use their data whenever possible. So I think this is really driving the enterprise market, right? Because then people can either own the infrastructure, own the instance of the model, and know where the data is being routed, right? And in fact, if you look at certain domains such as HIPAA compliance or government, government agencies typically require a GovSanction cloud, right? Their certifications just to be able to use certain data centers for government use cases. But yeah, pay attention to what, if you're sending your data to a company, what are they incentivized to do? And they're going to do their best to do it. So that would be kind of my 2 cents. Always look at the incentive. Entities do what they're incentivized to do, nothing less, nothing more. I think that holds the public policy as well.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, Kyle, the words you use, pay attention. It seems like there's not much attention span left in the world today. So hopefully we can do better on that. All right, you guys, this has been a great conversation. I know we have barely scratched the surface of all that you guys know and work on and do. So I would like to ask for closing thoughts from each of you on just something you would like to impart with the audience, something you're passionate about working on, anything that you would want to share just to close out our conversation today. Jerrod, could we start with you on that?
Thanks. Look, I really appreciate being here. And I think main takeaway I want to give to everyone is to continue to remain curious, but also remain vigilant when it comes to emerging technologies and tools out there. A lot of tools come out looking very shiny and very awesome and intuitive. But as Carl said, take a second to always look at the intention behind it as well.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Amanda.
Thank you for having me as well. I guess the main thing that's been top of mind for me is just it's up to us at this crossroads of just the industry itself and in this nascent industry to continue to become educated in this space and how it can be used, as well as to keep understanding the implications of it. Because it just basic knowledge can take you a long way and help you be ahead of the game in the next coming years.
Amazing. Very encouraging and also sobering thoughts. Kyle, anything you would like to share as a closing thought?
Not too much. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the moment with these constant updates. I know I woke up like a kid on Christmas with the Llama 3.1 release, but yeah, it's good to always take a step back, take a breath, and be mindful of what are you trying to accomplish, and most importantly, be mindful of your data. It always comes down to data.
Amazing. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us. Special thanks to our speakers, our guests today, Jerrod and Amanda, as well as Kyle, the constant source of help in these conversations. Thank you for joining us. Make sure that you are following us on X at TensorWave Cloud and LinkedIn at TensorWave to make sure and stay up to date with any of the further talks that we're going to be having. And on that note, we will be back next week, Tuesday at 10 a.m. So be sure to join us. We already have a few guests that we're lining up. It will be very interesting. And then just as we are closing out, Jerrod, would you like to share where people can find you on socials and get in touch if they would like to discuss anything further?
Thanks. Yeah, feel free to follow me here on X, on this project. Always happy to chat, get to know everyone. And it's the same on YouTube and Instagram as well, beyond this project. Thanks so much.
Amazing. And Amanda, where can anyone find you if they would like to follow what you're working on?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter as well. I also write an articles demystifying information around AI at thesidebuyers.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And Kyle, would you like people to get in touch with you, and where can they do so?
Just hit me up on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you once again, and I can't wait to talk to and hear from more guests next week. We will see you then.